We were on the plane flying home, and you just think, 1500ths of a second was the difference between turning left and being in business class and being showered with loads of praise and excitement to then turning right and being placed in a seat that's near the toilet.
Hi everyone, it's Chris here with the next episode of the My Defining Moments podcast. Just to recap, the podcast delves into the life of an elite sportsperson as they select their 5 defining moments. My guest in this episode was named one of Scotland's top 10 sportswomen of the last decade and has represented her country at multiple championships over the last 15 years. Hannah Miley is one of the most consistent and successful British swimmers of all time, winning world, European and Commonwealth titles. She has the nickname Smiley Miley for a reason, but as we discuss, there are many highs and lows that have shaped Hannah into the person she is today. So, let's dive under the surface and hear Hannah reflect on her illustrious career. Hi Hannah.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being on My Defining Moments. Just want to start by asking you how you've been during lockdown. It's been a pretty strange year, especially, I guess, with swimming pools not being open. How have you coped with that?
Not gonna lie, it's been a bit rough. Swimming's quite an unforgiving sport in that we do have to train quite frequently as athletes. We're in twice a day, pretty much 6 days a week. So to go from that to then nothing for 4 months was hard because we're in a medium that we don't have gravity going against us. I guess the only time we can kind of replicate what we do is if we just lie in a bath, but that's not always ideal. So I did try and do some open water swimming when that was allowed for us in Scotland. So kind of went over to some lochs and a couple of lakes and gave that a shot, and instantly realized how much I appreciate following a black line. I have no sense of direction whatsoever. That was good fun. And then coping with colder water temperatures and just the whole safety side of being in open water. So that was good. But yeah, it was definitely a roller coaster going through lockdown. I had good days and then I had bad days. And for me, I think I just tried to feel like I was doing something. So even though I wasn't in the pool, working on Pilates work just to help my body stay connected and help just my mind to switch off. Land work as well by doing group Zoom sessions with my squad, just high intensity cardio work. And for me, even though that might not be the right thing, it was better than sitting around not doing anything. So it felt it kept me moving forward. And I guess I could say now I probably see more opportunity from that time. I got to work on areas that I was maybe a bit weaker at, some upper body work, work on rehabilitation work, and just try to steer away too much from the negative stuff. So yes, it's been different, been very, very different, but glad that the pools are now opening up in Scotland soon. So hopefully we can get a little bit more normality and hopefully get a little bit more back to sort of normal for our sport. And kind of take it from there.
And obviously with the Olympics being postponed, when that was announced, what was your instant reaction to that? Because I guess for you was this your final year? Was this going to be the kind of end game? And then now that's another year. How was that for you?
Yeah, it was difficult. I've actually not really spoken about it or kind of wanted to be interviewed by it because I didn't really know what the right thing to say was, because I was in two minds. One part of it was relief in a sense because it definitely was the right call for it to be postponed. Had the Olympics still gone ahead, it really wouldn't have been a fair playing field with not everyone being able to swim. For us as athletes, we would have been put at risk, and the spectators as well. And it just wouldn't have been the games that we know and love and have kind of grown and see it kind of develop over the last couple of years. So it definitely was the right call for it to be postponed, but selfishly as well, part of me felt like my plans are all out the window. You kind of have it set in your head how you want it to go, and then it doesn't fall into plan. And even now I kind of should know that, yes, having a plan's ideal, but I have to learn to be a bit more flexible. So yes, it's taken me a little bit of getting used to get my head around things and trying to not stress about it. It's the same for everybody across the board. Everyone will have had different plans changed. And for me, getting back in like the open water side, I kind of realized I still enjoy being in the water. And, we still don't know what's going to happen. So I kind of feel, well, if I keep working towards it as if it is going to go ahead next year, then for me, it feels like a target and it keeps me moving forward. So yeah, so I can't really give you an exciting reaction, bar the fact it was kind of like, oh, okay, kind of gutted, but actually it was the right decision. So yeah, so I guess it was just a bit meh.
But I guess in terms of like your shape and stuff, because you obviously had ankle surgery back end of 2018, does this give you more time then, or were you already kind of back to normal?
Yeah, I guess it can be seen as a blessing in disguise. There were a couple of sort of niggles I was having in my shoulder, so if anything, it actually worked out probably more in my favor in a sense. It's given me a chance to properly rest up and actually give my body a chance to recover and repair itself. Um, and yeah, it just kind of puts, I guess, all the athletes in a position that we've never been in before. We don't normally take big breaks in the summer from at the end of season before we start our next season. Some people can take maybe 2 or 3 weeks off, and that's about it. So to have 4 months of no pool swimming has been very, very weird. So yeah, so I guess it's kind of exciting in a way because it'd be intriguing to see how my body responds to that extra rest and what training I'll need to do. So I definitely need to be smarter with my training. But yeah, I'm just trying to kind of view things in a positive mindset and just kind of take any opportunity that I get.
And are you taking like the kind of training schedule and training template you had planned for 2020? You're just going to literally copy that into 2021?
It's going to be kind of difficult to do that because I guess one of the hardest things when we found out the Olympics were cancelled, you can't just train for an Olympics in 1 year. It takes 3-4 years of preparation work to get to that point. So to have 4 months where all of that pretty much disappears, it does kind of feel quite gutting because all that foundation of work was almost for nothing. So to kind of build back up on that, I don't know what it's going to take. And I think we have a rough idea and we have a plan, but it can't be the exact same because the foundation of work is going to be it has been slightly different. So yeah, so I'm going to have to trust a lot of coaching instincts. My dad being my coach, he's got a lot of experience with working with a couple of Olympic athletes. So I trust what he's got planned, but also he relies on me to feed back with what I feel from my personal experience. And being 31 now, it's kind of nice to feel that you also have that personal responsibility for your sport and for what you do. So yeah, so it's not quite a copy and paste, but we can use it as a guideline and help us to shape some form of a plan, I guess. But I'm kind of not stressing too much about it because there's still a lot of things that are changing and still could happen. Um, so we have a rough idea, but I'm kind of staying open minded and just doing what I can to keep myself fit and active.
And as you obviously mentioned, you're 31 now. Is that something that are you training differently anyway? Is it like, I guess you're not training as you were when you were 21?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I kind of felt like I was a little rubber bouncy ball. You could throw me at a wall and I'd bounce straight back off and I'd be fine. Do that now and it doesn't quite bounce back as quickly as it used to. So there's lots of different things that I've been looking into, and that's one of the great things I think I've had with lockdown. Instead of kind of sitting still, I've kind of tried to find ways to educate myself and learn a little bit more. I even looked a little bit more into like my menstrual cycle and how I can help support my body more through different phases, nutrition, and just really trying to help my body get through it because you sometimes can take it for granted when you're younger because you just bounce back. Your body's young and fresh. And I'm not saying my body's not young, but it definitely needs a little bit more support and a little bit more TLC and kind of looking after. And the more I can look after it, the more robust and hopefully the more my engine and kind of my body itself can, maintain its sort of high level fitness and keep myself going without falling apart. But one of the things I've loved doing lockdown actually has been reaching out to a lot of clubs and the swimming community to try and help out as much as I can. Because I know that a lot of swimmers will have been really gutted, and they still are, that they're not back in. And I just don't want to see the swimming community get smaller and smaller. So I've done what I can to try and help them out.
And just in terms of like your event, obviously like the Hungarians like Tinka Hostu and that, they're all the same age as you. I mean, I guess you must look at the event and think, has it actually moved on that much?
I think it's the way in which it's swum has definitely changed over the years, and it's nice to see that there are actually quite a few athletes that are my age or give or take a couple of years. So it goes to show that it's not just a young athlete sport. I think a lot of senior athletes tend to disappear or tend to retire earlier because the demand for training is a lot. And for me, I've got to try and maintain rent. I've got bills to pay. I'm not on funding anymore, so I've got to find ways to kind of support myself whilst I'm still swimming. So it can get harder as you're older. And I guess the natural progression is to then just retire and focus on the next thing. But if you look at a lot of other sports like cross country skiing or marathon running, a lot of the longer distance and endurance events are won and more successful with the older athletes, because you build that foundation, you build that engine, you've got that experience and that knowledge and just the natural feel for the sport and the event. Um, and I think sometimes a lot of people forget that in swimming, yes, being a youngster and being, flying through it is great, but there's a lot that can be said about being an older athlete and actually still sticking with it, especially in a middle distance event as well. It is harder. It definitely isn't the easiest option to do, but it's nice to know that I'm not the only one sort of my age that's still hanging on, I guess.
Well, just going back to the very beginning, then to the start of your journey. How did you first get into swimming, and what was it about it that you fell in love with?
Well, it was my dad that taught me how to swim from quite a young age, and I think it was more from a safety point of view. We've got so much access to lots of different parts of water in hotel pools, leisure centres, holidays, the sea, the lake. We're pretty much surrounded, even Britain itself, we're surrounded by water all the time. So my dad was pretty keen to make sure that myself and my two younger brothers were competent around the water. So I think I could just about swim what could be classed as backstroke by the age of 3. He took me up to a swimming pool up in Aviemore and taught me up there, really. And apparently, it took him 20 minutes to teach me. And I've always just loved being in the water. From the offset, I guess I wasn't hugely into swimming. There were lots of other things going on. I really enjoyed brownies. I really enjoyed brownies, as in the like Scouts brownies, not necessarily the chocolate thing. I'm not much of a chocolate person. Netball. I tried a bit of running. I loved horse riding. Played the piano. So I had lots of other activities going on, and swimming was just one of those activities that I just enjoyed. And I guess it wasn't until probably I was about 10 years old and I watched the Sydney Olympics, and I hadn't really appreciated how much involvement my dad had in swimming. And he developed a device called an aquapacer and got to travel the world and work with so many top level Olympic athletes. He worked with Ian Thorpe, Misty Hyman, and the girls at the Stanford University over in America, our Olympic silver medalist Paul Palmer. There were so many athletes that he got to go to their programs and work with using his device. So I kind of knew that he knew a lot about swimming. And for me, I guess I was just kind of like, yeah, I just enjoy swimming. And I had a bit of a competitive edge in that I had to swim more lengths than him if we went to lane swimming. But we were watching the Sydney Olympics, and I remember watching Misty Hyman swim her 200 butterfly. And for me, she's my all time swimming hero. And just from there, watching her demeanor and how she was before her race, I just instantly fell in love with who she was as a person and just how effortless when you watch the top level swimmers swim. They just make it look so easy and so smooth, and it's really quite an awesome art form to swim so fast and make it look effortless. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to, it would be nice to go to the Olympics, but I'm not a big athlete. I was never that strong. I was quite slight and tiny and quite sticky, but I was very fiery in my head. Like I knew that I was quite competitive. And I guess as I started getting older, my confidence in myself kind of grew a little bit. But yeah, it kind of just grew and grew. And it wasn't until I was 14, 15 that I then just realized actually I really quite like what I do in the water and I feel a bit more at home. I can trip over on a flat floor. I've got incredibly floppy feet, which is not so good for any other land based sports other than being in a water based environment.
At what time then did you and your dad kind of sit down and have that conversation of like, are we doing this? And me being the coach and you being the athlete and having that relationship as opposed to just father and daughter.
Yeah, I think it was probably around 14, 15, but even still, it wasn't an actual sit down conversation. It just evolved. I hugely trusted in what he knew. I knew there was no way I was able to argue with what he knew because he worked with Olympic athletes and Olympic gold medalists as well. I think it was something like 1 in 3 Olympic gold medalists had used his acropace or used his device. So there wasn't a chance I was going to, stand up and say, I know more than you, because that just wasn't going to happen. But he was a helicopter pilot as well, so he wasn't a full-time swimming coach. So he had to put a lot of trust in me as well to do the training if he wasn't there. And respect is earned and not given. And I think just over the years we just developed this respect for each other, and even still it keeps growing and our relationship keeps changing. So yeah, we just for me it just worked. I felt I was getting better, I was getting faster. He was great at thinking outside the box. The training environment wasn't necessarily like the high quality standard that you think most elite athletes get, but for us, we reveled in it. We always felt if anything's worth having, you've got to fight for it, you've got to work for it. You can't just be handed it on, given it to you by on a silver platter sort of thing. You have to earn it. And we always joked about, it's the Rocky effect, going up in the mountains with like, a log on your back. I didn't necessarily do that, but there was little things that we did that made us feel like this is the Rocky effect. And yeah, it just came down to trust and respect. And why try and fix something that's not broke? For me, I was improving, I was getting faster, I was making teams. So for me, it seemed obvious to keep sticking with it until I felt there was a point where I wasn't progressing or improving.
But how has it been like with you? Obviously, your dad as your coach. Has that ever been a fraught relationship? Has there ever been poolside arguments, or have you left things at the pool, or have you at home? Are you different? How have you managed that?
The funny thing is I've not really known it any other way. So I've not known what was normal or what wasn't. I guess the lines were blurred sometimes between coach, athlete, father, daughter. We never really had any sort of explosive arguments on poolside. I'm not an argumentative type person. I tend to just clam up, which sometimes can be quite a difficult thing because I just go into my own head and I struggle to get the words out. But sometimes we would have to have the discussion then back home because we were in our home environment and it made it easier. And in any relationship, you will have discussions, you will have fallouts, and you will have arguments. And I think it is important to have that because that's how you learn and grow and develop as individuals. And especially as me being a young athlete, maturing and getting older, um, you know, for him as a coach, he was kind of shaping my pathway and what it was that I wanted out of my career and what it would take. Andy Murray and his mom, there's a lot of other athletes that do work with their parents, and for some people it works, and for some people it doesn't. So for me, it works. Yeah, it's not perfect, but no relationship ever is really.
Going back to your five defining moments, the first one you picked was an interesting one. You just put a little story about how your goggles snapped when you were young, and how this was kind of a bit of a moment in your career.
Yeah, I think I was about 6 or 7, and it must have been like a club meet at my local pool. So it's a 4 lane, 25-meter pool, and I just felt like, yeah, I'm gonna dominate this race. I'm gonna feel. I think it might have been like 25 meters freestyle or 25 meters butterfly, but I felt really confident and really cocky in what I was doing because I love to race, and I've got my bright coloured swimsuit on. For me, the brighter the swimsuit, the better. And I put the goggles on my face, and as soon as I put them on, they just snapped. And as soon as they snapped, all of my confidence disappeared. And there was like a moment of wait, and then I just bawled my eyes out because I didn't know what to do. I'm standing behind the block, about to race. I've got no goggles. My world had ended. And all of a sudden, I think there must have been like 12 goggles from parents on poolside, swimmers, just literally lobbing them at me, being like, take these spare goggles. So, and the funny thing is, I actually can't remember the race itself. I just remember that moment of my goggles just snapping and me bursting into tears. And after that, I realized how important it was to carry spares with me. And it definitely kind of pulled me down a peg or two in my confidence level. So sometimes things don't go according to plan. You can have the best will in the world of this is how it's going to go. I can see it, I can visualize it. And then something at the last minute can just completely take it off course. And, for me to just stand there and cry was probably not the most helpful thing to do. But at that moment, that was the emotional response. But that moment taught me don't turn up behind a block without a bag that's got a spare cap, that's got a spare pair of goggles, that's got a spare racing suit. So you are prepared. So it taught me to be a lot more prepared, because if not, you're just going to get caught short and it's going to feel like the end of the world for you.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting choice of like a defining moment of your career, but I guess it's one that's kind of set you up for the rest of your career in a way, and taught you what to remember and what not what to do correctly before a meet. But yes, that was your first defining moment, was snapping goggles when you were
Yeah.
younger. Um, I guess moving on, when at what stage did you kind of realize that, especially the 400 IM was going to be your event, and what was going to be your strength? Because obviously, being a medley swimmer, you're diverse at all the strokes. But what stage did you kind of realize that that was the one for you?
Um, the funny thing is, I actually can't really remember the specific point. I was actually more of a 200 butterfly swimmer. That was my kind of go-to event. And the 200 fly and the 400 IM, I kind of felt go hand in hand because they're kind of the two non-fun events in swimming. If you're good at fly, it's great, but if you're not good at fly, the 200 fly is like the worst event in the world, and then the 400 is just you're working every muscle within your body. So why would you want to push yourself to that level of pain? So when you're entering events, the 200 fly, if you look at the start list, people that enter themselves in sprint events, you've got loads of heats. You've got 10, 12, 15 heats, full heats. Whereas a 200 fly, you might maybe have 2 or 3 heats. So the number of people entering the distance events on the 200 fly and the 400 IM was a lot less than what it was for the sprint events. And I knew I wasn't a big athlete. I knew standing on the block next to these tall, big sprinters that I just didn't have the capacity to fire my muscles around as fast and as strongly as they could. But give me a distance and a set pace, I can hit that pace and then I just hold it. So for me, that's why the 200 fly and the 400 IM worked, because being smaller, I think I was able to go through the water with less resistance and I recovered quicker. But also, I saw an opportunity in that I had a higher chance of making finals at those 200 fly and 400 IM events than I did in the sprint events. And we went through a phase as well where any competition I went to, if I qualified time wise for a set event, I swam it. So it got to the point where I qualified for every event from the 50 free to the 800 free and all the other bits in between. So I would spend a weekend where I was just in every other race because that's what I qualified for. And I was knackered by the end of it, but nobody else was doing it. So for me as a youngster, I kind of enjoyed being just that little bit different. I enjoyed going to school with wet hair. I enjoyed setting myself away from everybody else. And to this day, I don't really know why. I just enjoyed being very different to everybody else. And I kind of felt the 400 IM was that difference because people tend to shy away from it because people found it hard. Any training sets, there was a camp I was on, and I was given a choice between a sprint set or a set of 10 800s, which is a really long distance set. Nobody wanted to do the 10 800s. Everyone wanted to do the short sprint event. So I kind of thought, you know what, I'm going to be the black sheep in the group. I'm going to do the 10 800s. And I don't think the coach expected anybody to do that. And I went across and did it purely because I wanted to be different. So yes, the 400 IM was just an event that over time, because I was swimming so many events back to back, it just naturally fell together and worked. And as I say, I think it was probably more of an opportunist moment because nobody else really wanted to swim it. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to hang around and do this event.
And then just your junior career. I mean, how was that? How did you find like the first meets for Great Britain? Did you ever think you'd be at national level, and did you ever think you'd be putting on the British cap or the Scottish cap for your country?
I was lucky enough to compete for Scotland at the Commonwealth Youth Games. That was really good, good fun. Went to Australia, got to miss a little bit of school, and froze out there because I thought it was going to be really hot because it's Australia. But it wasn't. It was March and it was freezing. I've never been so disappointed in all my life. But that was an experience in itself. That was the furthest away I'd ever been from home. Dealing with jet lag, dealing with just a different culture, the different weather, racing outdoors. There's loads of little things. And I did enjoy it. Even though it was a really tough experience, I really did enjoy it. So the next thing for me was to try and target European Junior Championships. And I just made it. I made it in for the 400 IM. And my dad loves his analysis. And we watched Jana Klitschkova, who was the main sort of dominant female in the 400 medley. And he looked back to what she was doing at the junior. And he said, oh, do you know that Jana actually made the European Junior Championships? And he found out that normally those who make the European Junior Championships tend to go on to compete at an Olympic Games. And I guess for me, that was a little bit of an eye-opener because I thought, oh, well, I'm actually one little step closer to potentially making an Olympic team. I still sometimes would doubt myself because of my size, but I guess my sort of feisty fieriness within my head and just being that competitive person always kept driving me, and that made me feel like, yeah, that actually would be really cool. It is possible. And I guess it wasn't until I then tried to qualify in that year, 2008, that everything just came together.
I mean, you mentioned your size quite a lot, and do you feel like being a bit smaller made you work a bit harder than you normally maybe would have done if you were a bit bigger? Or and did you feel like you were maybe underestimated by competitors and coaches? And did you always feel like you've always been that little bit behind everyone else?
I always love the fact that I was underestimated, and I love the fact that if a small little swimmer can beat someone that's twice their size, I always thought that was quite cool. So I love being the underdog in that sort of sense. Um, but the benefits were I recovered so much faster because there's not much of me to go through, and the amount of work that I do and the loading that I do, the damage and the sort of adaptations, I'd get through them really, really quickly so I could step back up again, which is one of the reasons why I could do multi events back to back. So I actually, again, started seeing the positives in it. And yeah, it was kind of funny to say, oh, I'm quite small and maybe use it as a negative to kind of not bring me down, but kind of see it not as a positive. But actually, there's many positives in being a smaller athlete. And for me, the best example is looking at Japanese swimmers. I remember racing there one time, and it was in a 200 breaststroke event, and they are phenomenal breaststroke swimmers. And I was the tallest person in my heat. Fair enough, I was almost double the age, I think, of some of the girls swimming, but I was the tallest person. So they are very petite, but their skill level and their technique is unreal. So it goes to show that it is down to technique and how you use your body. So yeah, so I kind of use my size as an advantage. Really, I didn't really see it as a negative.
And you mentioned your junior career when you went to Australia to compete, and then 2006 you were there for the Commonwealth Games. I'm hoping you packed a bit more warm weather gear this time, but it was a little bit warmer in that time of year, I think. So how was that as an experience? Your first senior competition and just missing the podium.
Yeah, it was actually really tough because 8 weeks before that, I was in hospital. We still don't really know what I was in hospital for, but I was really quite badly ill. My core temperature went up to 40 degrees, and my parents did think I had meningitis at one point. I think I possibly had pneumonia, but I don't know. I was in the infectious diseases ward for about 2 weeks on a drip, on an IV drip. I was just very, very poorly. And then that was, yeah, from January. The games were in, I think, March time. So I got back in training, and I remember my first training session back in, I got drugs tested. So I had to phone my mom and ask, what did they give me in the hospital? Because you have to know any medication that's gone into your system. So that was quite scary and eye-opening as well for me at the same time. So I didn't really know what to expect, and to come out fourth was a lot better because I remember the heats just being horrific. I really, really struggled. I was in one of the outside lanes or near the outside lanes, so my heat swim wasn't quick. And then it just all came together because I just gave it my all into the final. And to just miss a medal was the first of many fourth places that I wasn't aware of that I'd hit in my career. But for me, it was the moment that I kind of fell in love with swimming to the point where I thought, I want to make this my career. It was because of the Commonwealth Games in 2006 that I really fully committed myself to then sticking with it and going through the journey and career that I've had.
Yeah, and I guess that gave you the appetite that you could make it as an Olympian that you'd always wanted to.
Yeah, I just love being in the village. I loved the hype and the media around it, the sort of build up, seeing so many different athletes. I loved going past the New Zealand section because whenever they won a medal at set times of the day, they would do the haka outside of their sort of main headquarters, and that was just so cool. The fact that you had food on tap 24/7, that's just like every athlete's dream. And I just kind of thought, you know what, this is allowing me to travel the world and experience so many different things that had I not chosen sport that I might not have experienced. So I kind of thought I just want to make the most of it and see where it takes me.
But then away from the pool, just moving on to your second defining moment, you've gone for an academic choice of failing advanced higher biology. Can you explain what that's about?
Yeah, I love the sciences. Maths, yeah, I could kind of get by. I'm more of a black and white person. I love reading, but I really struggled with English. So when it came to advanced hires, I kind of thought, I really want to take biology to the next level. I really quite enjoy it. I thought I was quite good at it. And advanced higher work just completely threw me. I thought going from standard grades to hires was a big jump. And I kind of thought, oh, well, it can't be any worse than that. But no, it's the first time you've pretty much got, I guess, first year uni work type style. So you're having to self-study. The teacher's not really there telling you what to do. They advise you. explain things and kind of open a bit more discussion on certain areas, but it really is down to you to study it and to get yourself through it. And the funny thing is I could memorize it. I memorized the whole thing, but when it came to the exam wanted the explanation of everything. And I could tell you exactly what page each of the topics were, but I couldn't explain it. I had no idea how to explain it. So I completely flunked my my prelim to the point where I was asked, it's probably a best idea that I didn't sit the final exam. I was mortified. Now, again, being quite a competitive person, even through schoolwork, I was always quite competitive. I always felt I had to try and get good marks and, I was never going to be like top of the class, but I felt I had to do a reasonable job and do the best I possibly can. So when it came out that I'd completely flunked this course, I was beside myself because it's the first time I properly failed something quite spectacularly, like not just a little bit, 17%. I mean, I got 17% out of 100. That's awful, absolutely awful. So yeah, they kind of recommended that I didn't sit the exam, and I panicked because I thought, I want to go on to university to look more into sciences, and I can get by with just my hires, but if I can't manage an advanced hire, how on earth am I going to manage university work? So I had to plead pretty much with the school to say, look, I can do this, I just need to ask for help and just get more help with it. And I was really lucky that being with sport, I got a lifestyle manager whose wife actually was a biology teacher. So I got personal tuition with her, and she helped guide my head into studying properly. So the way that I'd been studying and revising just wasn't working for me. So I had to try and break my habits of what I had and try and develop new ones. And that was a huge kick up the butt, a massive kick up the butt. And I felt I have to prove something. Eventually the school said, okay, well, we can let you sit the exam. So I felt I needed to make sure that I didn't let them down and also let myself down. And I came away with a B. So to go from a complete failure to then going up to a B, for me, I was so chuffed and proud of myself. And I realized that at no point do I ever sit an exam or do I ever go to a competition where I'm not fully prepared. And to make sure that I ask for help when I need it, because I felt that I had to do this on my own. I felt I had to try and push through even though I wasn't understanding it, and that it is okay to ask for help. So yeah, that kind of stuck out for me as a defining moment because it changed the way that I approached my studying. It even changed the way that I approached my swimming as well. I realized that I had to ask for a little bit more help if I didn't feel like I was prepared enough for something.
And I guess around that time you were preparing for your first Olympics. And how was that build up to Beijing in like 07, 08? How was that time in your life?
That was really interesting because that was when swimming started having full body suits. So the suit era was starting to come into play, and it was interesting. So 2007, I didn't qualify to make the World Championships. So I also kicked off in 2006. Raced at the European Championships to try and qualify for the Worlds. And I didn't qualify. I missed the qualification. And because of that, there was like 4 or 5 international competitions that I missed because of that one swim. And we held a British Championships that were running at the same time as the World Championships in 2007. And the time that I posted in Manchester at the British Nationals would have won me a silver medal at the World Championships. And had I been there and raced that swim in Melbourne in 2007, I would have been pre-selected for the Olympic team, and then I would have raced at the European Championships. So it was very messy, kind of going from end of 2006 right the way through to 2008. Again, a bit like with my advanced higher biology, I felt I had something to prove, and I didn't want to miss out on an opportunity like that again, because that one swim cost me quite a fair few races that would have, I guess, it might have helped boost a bit more in my international career, but in some sense it probably was a good thing that I missed it, because it made me a lot more determined and fiery to try and make sure that I didn't let that happen again. And then when I qualified in April 2008, that was amazing. It was like one of the best experiences ever, because even still you have those little doubts. You just think, can I do it? I'm not sure, because you don't want to get too cocky. My sort of past a couple of experiences have taught me, don't get too cocky. Don't assume everything's kind of set and done, because life can easily turn around and just say, nah. So to touch the wall and realize that I qualified was just one of the best experiences ever. And then the Olympic team went to race at the World Short Course in Manchester a couple of weeks later. And I won a silver medal there. And actually, I was under the old world record, but the girl who won obviously got the world record. So for me, it was quite a nice lead up to the games. And then the games itself were just, they were pretty phenomenal. It's Olympic Games, it's everybody's dream, and it definitely was different to what I expected it. But yeah, it came with its ups and its downs, and I guess there's not really anything I can think of that really stood out for me, bar actually just qualifying for them.
What was it like when you got there, the Olympic Village? How was Beijing as a whole, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, so for me, I guess the whole Olympic experience is pretty cool. So the first bit you notice is the amount of kit that you get. For me, the freebies, that an athlete getting a freebie is just like amazing. So you get 3 suitcases filled with kit, and you try and work out which bits you can wear. Obviously, we get opening ceremony kit, but we never get to wear it. Then when you arrive actually at the Olympic Village, you're told to, the best advice we've been given. It's huge because it is literally like a little mini town. You've got buses that take you all the way around. So we got taken to the Great Britain block, which is like a block of flats. You get told who you're sharing with, which floor, which room number you're in, and all the different kind of protocols for that. And you just want to go and explore, but you kind of have to hold back and realize. For me, my race was on day one, so you can't really ruin your taper or your rest period by just going around and exploring, because you can spend hours on your feet and you just end up ruining your performance, because you have to realize you're there to perform. You're not there to sightsee or explore. There's time for that afterwards. And you kind of feel a little bit like a rabbit caught in headlights, because you walk past and you see all these top, Michael Phelps is walking past, and yeah, there's just all these top level athletes just milling around doing what they need to do. First thing in the morning when you're going for breakfast, you got all the speed walkers. Literally, you're walking and they're sprinting past you, but they're walking at such a fast pace. Like, I never truly I always underestimate the speed those speed walkers go at. It's unbelievable. And they just, going around, and all the boxers that are trying to make weight, they're running around, because in Beijing it's really hot and humid, and they're running around in these like sort of zip up jumpers and tracksuit bottoms, sweating so much, and they're obviously trying to cut to make weight. The best bit was going into the food hall, and then you try and play guess the sport. So you see a couple of athletes coming in, and you've got the sort of little gymnasts, and then you've got the really tall basketball players, and then you get the wrestlers coming in. And you can kind of tend to see a general body trend for some of the sports. And even then you get to meet different people if you're brave enough to maybe sit with another country and try and speak to them and get to know them a little bit more. So yeah, so there's so many emotions that kind of hit with the Olympics, because it's been building it for 4 years. Everyone talks about it. They always talk about it. And then it's here. And then as soon as the Olympics is done, that's it. Everyone moves on to the next thing. But sometimes the athletes are still stuck hanging on to it. And you hear a lot of athletes tend to go into this depression phase. Sorry. And that kind of period is because I guess we need time to be able to wean ourselves off it, to bring ourselves back down, to then refocus for the next one. But yeah, there's just so many emotions that get hit with it. And then any great performance, you're hit with a massive high. It feels amazing. And then even if a performance is just not quite at your best, it can feel terrible. It comes all the way down here. So there's no mid-range for the sort of emotions that you feel. It's the extremes, really. You have to try and find different ways to remind yourself that at the end of the day, it is just another gala. It is just another competition that you need to go and perform at. Just a couple more people are watching.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess in terms of Beijing, sixth in the 400 IM, not bad for a first Olympics. How do you cope, I guess, as a swimmer when you enter into so many different events and the emotions of that, of like, especially for you with the 400 IM always being at the start of the schedule, and then that's your main event,
Yeah.
and then but then you've always got if I didn't do well in that, I've still got the other ones. And how are your emotions during that week of a meet?
It can vary. Sometimes you feel like you've got control of them, and then sometimes you don't. And to be honest, that's kind of why it's important to race as often as you can, so that you can have those experiences, because it's not always going to go well, and it's not always going to go according to plan. And I think it is important to have some of those experiences where you do get kicked in the teeth, where you do feel like that didn't work out, because then you've got to make decisions and try and figure out how you can make it better and improve on it. And it does come down to psychology. Your head does rule a lot, especially coming into Olympic year. You can be physically in the right place, but as soon as you go into that call room, races can be won and lost right there if you're not mentally in the right place. So if you let a swim hamper you and pull you down for the rest of the meet, it can be very hard to pick it back up. So you've really got to try and find ways and strategies and work hard to compartmentalize it almost, but then be able to, at the end of the meet, open it back up, because there's nothing worse than trying to box it and move on. And I think Rio for me was kind of a really tough one for that, because I struggled to box it up quite a fair bit. And I kind of feel like now I've been able to fully embrace it and look at it a little bit more. But at that time, yeah, it was one of those swims where you just kind of like, I don't know what to do with it. One of the best quotes I've heard just recently was, "We live so much in our own heads, so let's make it a nice place." So when you finish a race that's maybe not so good, the last thing you want to do is just completely beat yourself up and just be in a horrific state in your head, because that doesn't help, and it doesn't help the team either. So yeah, I think definitely working on sports psychology, or just your individual psychology, is quite important to then help you through the rest of the competition.
Well, following on from Beijing, like you mentioned, it was the shiny suits era when it was people were all setting crazy times, and then 2009 British champs, you set a national record which still stands today. I mean, talk about that era of putting yourself into those really tight suits.
Yeah, they took an hour to put on. It was a nightmare and took all the skin off my knuckles. There were some interesting ways of getting into those suits, but I'm glad that they're gone, because it definitely spoiled the sport for a little bit, because it came about what suit were you wearing and not necessarily the training that you put in.
But then, yeah, that year obviously British record at the national champs, and then into the worlds, and a decent, top six in the 200 IM, and then another fourth in the in the 400. So how was Rome? Because it looked like a great champs, and again, yeah, another fourth place.
Yeah, Rome was really good. It was probably one of the last international sort of major championships to be held outdoors. I don't know how the spectators sort of coped with it, because they must have been absolutely frying in that heat. Yeah, it was tough. We were in a venue, our accommodation, the catering company went bust. So food wise, we were really struggling, and there were a couple of people that had dietary needs, and they were pretty much just living off rice and little bits of ham. We weren't able to get good food, so we were having to go and outsource food ourselves. I can't really remember too much about it, bar the fact that it was another fourth place finish, which was just frustrating. Um, and the time that I posted at the British Championships would have nudged me closer into getting into that medal position again. But it wasn't too far off. And again, looking back at it now, I guess with the experiences that I've had since then, I was focusing too much on my time. I was focusing too much on the numbers and the black and white of, well, that time would have won me a medal. And it's not necessarily about the time, it's just how you swim the race. And I knew at the end of it, I couldn't have given it any more. And again, when you're in that suit, for me, it didn't really make that much of a difference. If anything, it kind of hampered me, because being smaller, I developed a way of swimming quite high on the surface anyway, and the suit felt like it lifted me even higher. So I was almost just not even in the water at some points. And I just really struggled with the rigidity and the strength that the suit had to just feel flowing, and that natural feel and technique that I had for the suit. Um, yeah, it just made, and it was crazy, because I think 43 world records were broken at that competition. So if you didn't break a world record, you were kind of considered, well, what were you playing at? That's obviously not a great swim. It was a really, really strange meet. And I remember I got drug tested as well so many times. And because of the heat, I remember the longest time I think I was there was about like 5 hours, because every time I tried to produce a sample, it was too dilute, to the point where I was there for so long, I missed dinner at our hotel. And it actually ended up being a really good thing, because I think I got given pizza and ice cream at the doping control office. So it kind of worked out quite well in my favor. But again, being part of the 4x2 relay, helping the girls get through from the heats into the final, and then they did an amazing performance and got a bronze medal. Um, that felt really good. So yes, it was a good meet. It was definitely a learning curve, again, being out in the sun, the amount of sun cream I went through. Being a Scot, I didn't want to fry, because I just burned so easily. Everyone else was getting such lovely tans, and I was just going from white to red, back to white again, with the odd speckle of freckles and all that. But yeah, I was glad when the suits then left, because yeah, the last competition I think was the duel in the pool. at the end of the year. That was the last competition before the suits were banned.
You came home from that challenge with a bronze medal from the relay, but your next defining moment comes at the 2010 European Championships when you won your first senior gold. And can you just talk about that whole week in Budapest and how great that was for you?
Yeah, so racing in Budapest, the first time I raced there was the European Junior Championships in 2005, which went well. I came away with a silver medal. 2006 was when I tried to qualify for the World Championships, and that just went terrible. That just wasn't so good. So I was kind of one for one going into this competition. I felt, right, third time lucky. Let's see how we can go. Am I going to go a negative experience or is it going to be a positive experience? And again, it was an outdoor competition. Again, I think it was probably one of the last sort of European meets we get to do outdoors. And I was up against the home crowd favorite, Katinka Hosu, and heats definitely felt rough. A lot of swimmers were really struggling with racing fast that morning. And when it came to the final, I just remember I had my headphones in. I was prepared, being a bit more warm, because in the evening as well, the sun's setting, but I'd rather be too hot than too cold. There's nothing worse trying to swim fast when you're cold. And everything just kind of clicked into place. And I just remember finishing and just being so shocked, A, that I'd won it, and B, that it was actually a pretty decent time, considering it was one of the first major competitions since the suit ban. And I wasn't actually that far away from the time that I posted wearing one of those suits. So it was a really surreal experience. And I just signed as well a deal with a suit sponsor, Arena, and I was wearing their kit. So for me, it cemented this is the right suit for me to wear. and there was just so much emotion behind it. I was thinking so much of my family, and I felt that, the fourth place in the world, the fourth place in the commies in 2006, and the sixth place in Beijing, as the athlete that was making the teams, but then not quite performing at the major meets. For me, that was a big turning point, because it felt like, I solidified myself as I am a contender. I am someone who can stand up and actually perform. And especially off the back of the suit era, it felt like I had chains that had just been released. And it was just before the Commonwealth Games as well in Delhi, which were a couple months later. And I just remember standing on the podium and hearing the national anthem. And then I kind of realized I am quite an emotional swimmer. So I ended up crying quite a fair bit. I got quite emotional because I just thought of my family. I thought of the hard work and the commitment that they went through. The day before, it was my 21st birthday, and I was stuck in the hotel because, again, your taper, you don't want to walk around and ruin your rest sort of phase. I kind of thought, all these people have these really big blowouts for their 21st, and here I am just stuck in a hotel. So to then end up on the podium, I kind of realized, it's those little moments and those, I guess at the time, sacrifices that you make kind of builds up to savor, and you appreciate those moments a lot more.
And as a meet as a whole, 2 more bronzes in the 200 IM and in the relay. So a very successful week for your 21st.
Yeah, it was awesome. And for me, it felt like, okay, so it's another one to go in the positive pile for Budapest.
Yeah, exactly. And then you carried that on to Delhi for the Commonwealth and another gold medal.
Yeah, that was a survival swim. That was definitely, I mean, I can laugh about it now. At the time, it was hard going. There are a lot of stories. We could definitely spend so many hours discussing them, but to come away with a gold for that definitely felt good because the 400 IM at the Commonwealth Games is always on the last day, and contrary to what it normally is for every other meet. And just with everyone getting so ill and so sick as each day was going on, the very last day, something would happen with the pool. We couldn't see the floor. The T-bar disappeared. There was just so much, I don't know, silt or something in the water. It wasn't great. The couple of days beforehand, all running water had stopped, and there was guys basically, this is really grim, I'm so sorry, but there were guys in the toilets, basically with a bin bag, bare hands, just scooping out what was in the toilet and then sticking it into the bin bags. And of course, they couldn't wash their hands because there was no running water. So guess where they washed their hands?
Oh, no.
In the swim down pool. So that was why we were all getting very ill. And our accommodation, our toilet flushed once every 7 hours as well. We had a shower that was built on a slope. And you couldn't shower without flooding the bathroom, but then we couldn't have a bath either because there were just rusty nails coming through. They'd just been hammered in. So I had a bit of a rocky start. I knocked myself out the day before I was due to race the 200 IM because I pulled the shower head over and basically tipped my head into the shower and just washed my hair and kind of did like a standing wash that way, conditioner, did my teeth, and then flicked my hair back over again. But as I flicked my head back over, I just cracked my head off the side of the bath and knocked myself out. So I had a massive bruise on my head, and trying to wear a really tight swimming cap the next day was just agony. But yeah, I didn't hit the time that I did at Europeans. And I think I came like fifth or sixth. And I got interviewed afterwards. And the interviewer, one of the guys asked me, "So, how does it feel to know that you've let down your team on day one by not coming away with a medal?" And I thought, well, it's not really my main event. And that really hurt. That was a really, really tough time. So that started off pretty horrific. My dad ended up getting really ill as well. He contracted E. coli and genuinely nearly died as well. His kidney packed in, and they were considering having to send him to the hospital, but they weren't sure whether they'd see him again if they went. So I'm very grateful for Niall, one of the team doctors who stayed with my dad and tried to just basically be with him for 24 hours to keep an eye on him. And he pulled through. So when the 400 IM came, I knew this was going to be, doesn't matter what time you go, it's just a survival swim. It's just a matter of finishing as best you can. So when I finished and I saw that I'd won it, it was more relief than happiness. It was just relief that A, it doesn't matter what happens now. I guess I've got the medal. And B, I saw my dad in the crowd. He got into a lot of trouble because he wasn't supposed to have been there. He snuck out of doctor's orders. So to be able to give him a hug as well. So there was a lot of things going on for that. But I can laugh about it now because it is kind of funny. But at the time, it was so tough.
Wow. So yeah, Daddy was as bad as we all heard about. From all the press in the UK at the time was like, it's horrible, and it really was by the sounds of it. So yeah, really a good survival job there.
Very much so. And I mean, the thing is, the people itself were lovely. Like they did so much to help. It just, yeah, it was just so unfortunate the way I think it came about. And there's so many other political things going on that didn't help. But yeah, it's definitely one that will always stick in my memory. With lots of funny stories now that they're funny. At the time, they weren't.
Moving on to 2011 World Champs, and finally a global medal on the long course, a silver, and that must have been quite satisfying actually. I see you've had lots of fourth places, but to get a global medal in the year before an Olympics as well, that must have felt like a huge moment.
It did, and to just pip out Stephanie Rice as well, who was a previous Olympic and world record holder, that in itself felt just nice. Again, it was capturing the feeling that I had in 2010, where you feel like I am still a contender, I am still worth it. And it was actually the first time I was made aware of Ye Wen, because she was coming back so fast on that last 50. And then I think she went on to win the 200 IM, so it was kind of like, okay, we might need to keep an eye on this one. Because she was so young and so fast. But yeah, that was a huge moment for me. Being on the podium at a world stage, again, being on the podium at European, you can be the best in Europe, you can be the best in the Commonwealth, but then to be the best in the world, for me, is one next step to being at the Olympics as well. So yeah, that definitely felt a really, really nice moment. Again, yeah, just similar to the 2010, I got very emotional on the podium and kept thinking about my family and everything that kind of goes behind it for that moment.
And how did that affect your mentality going into 2012? Obviously, home Olympics, you're a world silver medalist. Was there a little bit more pressure on you?
Yeah, there was. And I was very aware that not everyone who wins a medal at the Worlds the year before the Olympics is guaranteed a medal at the Olympics. And it was very hard trying to speak to the media about that, because everyone kind of kept thinking, oh, it's fine, you're going to win it because you won a medal here. And you just like, no, a lot can change in a year. And it almost felt like people were just assuming and guaranteeing. And then that was when I was kind of having to battle the expectation, not just, I guess, from the public, but from myself. Because you feel like, well, I can do it. I've done it. I just need to do it at the Olympic stage. And yeah, and being a home games as well, the expectation level just kind of takes up a notch. Being up in Scotland was actually kind of handy because I guess the whole buzz and the hype around London, it was still there, but it wasn't as intense. I guess the further north you go, the sort of less in your face. We don't have many billboards going around Aberdeen. And at the time I was living in Inverurie, which is just a small little town. So it felt quite nice because you could kind of deal with it at a bit more of a calmer sort of environment. And then when you come down and race or go down to when the Olympic Games were held, it does kind of hit you a little bit. But yeah, it was just trying to deal with, okay, that's what they're hoping for and expecting. Try not get too dragged into it. And it was the first time where I made a call for any social media that I would delete my apps before. I think we were at the holding camp. I made a call. I'm not going to look at any social media before I race. Because I just don't want to get pulled into any negativity or get stressed out by anything, and just trying to look after sort of my mental state. And I guess with the race in itself, the hardest part was knowing that the time that I did at trials again would have won me a medal on the podium. But the race in itself was definitely controversial, I guess, with Yeshi Wen coming back at the speed that she did. But there's nothing we can do about it. The result is what it is, and she did drugs tests and came out clean. So, a lot of people, I guess, still have their suspicions, but I never wanted to be an athlete that sits and holds on to grudges, because I think that's not healthy. And for me, I kind of made peace with, okay, that's the swim. I can't control the outcome. Fifth place is the best place I could possibly have been. There's not much more. And I think the hardest part was, again, going into the media zone. Somebody asked me, "Oh, well, how do you think your dad will feel?" And for me, that was very, very personal, because I'm obviously very, very close to my dad. And I remember breaking down and getting quite upset at the interview, because I suddenly panicked thinking he's going to be disappointed in me. Is he going to be disappointed with me? And he wasn't. He really wasn't.
I guess 2012 as a whole, what was that like, competing in a home, in front of a home crowd and having a home Olympics? I mean, it was still a great Olympics.
To have that number of people chant and cheer your name when you walk out was just unreal. For me, the best moment was having my headphones on, having my music played. There was no point, because as soon as you walked out, you could not hear it because of the noise of the crowd. And still to this day, if I sit and think about it, I'll always get goosebumps for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the end of the 2012 season, the short course world champs, because that was a global title, and it wasn't just any, obviously it was short course, but it was the fact you beat Yishi Wen and Hosu to that gold. That must have felt like quite a great way to end 2012.
Yeah, that was really good, because I know off the back of 2012, I was kind of stuck in a little bit of limbo. Again, whilst the games itself was just so exciting, once it finished, you just hit that little dip. And I didn't know what to do with myself. And I even think my dad wasn't sure what he wanted to do. And I felt really determined to try and have a little bit more ownership of what I was doing in my sport. Because before, I was just listening and just following exactly the orders and the way that my dad was coaching, and following him implicitly. And I kind of felt like now's the time that I possibly need to have a bit more of an input. So I took a little break and I went and stayed at a friend's house and sat and worked out a plan, looked at trying out different sports. So I looked at contacting a local athletics club to try and get a little bit more explosive power. And then we sat down with the sort of the strength and conditioning coach, nutritionist, and my dad and I, and we just basically brainstormed, right, how can we change up my training regime to be better, to be more productive and proactive, that I can get these adaptations, that I can get the quality of it. So we did something radical from September through to, I think, October, November. I cut back the number of training sessions I did, increased the intensity, tried to add in a bit more plyometric work. And it was stuff that I've never done before. And it was funny because I'm normally used to swimming a set number of mileage in the water, and I wasn't doing that. And you could kind of see my dad and I thinking, can we just do a little bit more? No, we've said we'll follow the plan, we'll stick with it. And we stuck with it. And then coming into November, December, I started noticing a change in my short course speed. I noticed that I actually had a bit of explosive power. And it just came together. And racing at that meet, again, it just felt a nice way to kind of finish off what was kind of a confusing year. Because yes, it was disappointing to not get a medal, didn't meet people's expectations. And then this sort of, if I'd only just done the time that I did at the trials, I would have won that medal. To then stand up and break the European record for the 400 IM at the European short course, that was like 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, and then go and race at the world short course. And then you've got the Olympic champion and then the soon to be future Olympic champion either side. And I just remember at that last 50, I could see Yeshi Wen coming back at me. And obviously, after London, I knew how fast she was going to be. So I was killing myself on that last 50 to try and reach the wall and to just finish it. It was just, yeah, it was unreal. And to stand on that podium again, a lot of people tend to think, oh, short course doesn't count. It's, not a long course meet. And yeah, it's at a different time. But I guess for me personally, it just felt a nice way to kind of cap off the year and cemented in, right, I kind of need to make a change into, I guess, more senior swimming. It's kind of funny thinking of only hitting senior swimming or senior training at the age of 22, when probably some people might have already started that at the age of 18. But it made me feel good in that, what, the partnership that my dad and I have, has to change. So I have a bit more of a say in things. So I don't have to just keep blindly following what he gives. I can have an input and it can work as well. So there was a lot of things to that race that I think just allowed us to move our relationship and partnership on.
And how do you think that affected you? Think going into 2013 and the world champs there, fifth place again. Was that? Did you feel like things had changed?
Yeah, I did actually, and it gave me a bit more confidence as well. The thing with 2013 was that I broke my hand like 8 weeks out. A little bit more before that. So I was trying to sprint. I was trying to race 100 freestyle, and when I went to finish, um, three of my fingers just bent backwards and got stuck. Just the angle that I hit the wall at, instead of flattening, I literally just drove my hand at the wall and just broke my fingers back, popped them back in. But the consequence of that is that I then broke the middle bone in my hand, and it was just agony. And I didn't realize it. I thought, oh, I'm fine, the shock of it. And I was just like, this is really sore. What am I going to do? I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Got in the swim down pool, tried to swim, and just any movement of my fingers just was agony. And I knew then I can't race. So yes, went got an MRI, and then they confirmed that it was broken, and I had to the trials. So I had to get a written letter from my physio and doctor saying that I can't race unless my hand is taped up, because we're not allowed to compete without any taping or any assistance that way. So we had to work out a taping system to basically buddy tape my middle finger, my fourth finger, and third finger together. Because anytime my middle finger moved, I mean, I couldn't tie my hair up. It was amazing how how useful and annoying if you can't use your middle finger. It impacts on a lot of things. So I managed to qualify with a broken hand, which I thought was amazing. And then a week before the championships was the first time I was able to train and race without tape. So, and it felt weird. And if there's any physios that listen, or if anyone is interested in how the body feels and senses things, the sort of most sensitive part of your body is your hands, because that's what we feel and that's what we touch. And for me, I had blocked off a lot of the sensitivity for about a month because it was, my bone was broken. I was determined to keep training. So to then suddenly bring back that sensitivity, like a week before I was about to race, it completely changed up my stroke again. So even though I was at the best sort of fitness level wise, my technique side was just off, because I was getting back a paddle that I hadn't really been able to use for quite some time. And I just didn't go back to the sort of typical technique that I was using before. So yeah, the fifth place was kind of bittersweet. It was a great performance in that I didn't expect to actually get there and be there. But at the same time, I hadn't really told anybody about it because I didn't want people to see it as an excuse. So yeah, so it was a bit bittersweet. I wanted it to be a better performance, but it was more frustration, I guess, the situation that I've been thrown into. But there was no other way around it. It could have gone a lot worse.
But I think you showed obviously the next year how new training regimes and and your fitness obviously from 2013 carried on into 2014, and that leads us on to your fourth defining moment, which was the gold medal in front of a home crowd at the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow.
That was pretty spectacular. And the funny thing is, it wasn't just because, again, it was a podium finish. There was so much more to it. The year leading into it actually was probably one of the worst years performance wise for me. Every time I raced, I was getting my butt kicked, and I felt like I was working really hard. I was the strongest I'd been, but it just wasn't translating into any of my races. And I was losing a lot of faith, and I was very aware that there was a lot of pressure on as well. And then I found out that they changed the schedule. The 400 IM was no longer on the last day. The 400 IM is now on the first day. And not only was it on the first day, it was the first event. And then coming into the meet, not only was it the first event, I was the first heat as well. So there was a lot of expectation and pressure riding on me to try and defend my title. And my main rival, Amy, at the time was just kicking my butt every time I raced her. She was getting faster and faster, and it was actually probably one of the best things for me at the time. I didn't feel it. I felt like this is terrifying. I'm under so much pressure to do this performance, and I'm going to end up letting not myself down, but the whole country down. And I was really in kind of like a big psychological turmoil with what to do with myself. And my dad was actually really good. He kept telling me, trust the process, stick with it. You want to do the right swim at the right time in the right pool. No point doing a fast swim in January if you can't then back it up in the summer. And then I noticed that my dad wasn't selected as a coach on the team. So that in itself, I guess my crutch of support when I was going through the holding camp and then actually there, I kind of panicked. And you think, at the age of 25, I should be able to handle not having my coach there, because I have done competitions where he hasn't been there. But I don't think many people realize the expectation and the pressure I was under going into that competition. And for me, I just needed him there to just tell me to calm down and to stop stressing out. And then the fact that he wasn't there, I then realized I had to do that myself. The last thing he said to me as well before I raced was, just race. And it was probably the best advice he could have given me. There was no, right, you need to go out in, a 62 and finish in a 103 or any kind of split times. He literally just told me to race. And it reminded me that that is literally all I have to do. I've studied my sport. I know my sport inside out. I know what I need to do personally in my event. But sometimes you just have to switch that analysis brain off and just literally race from the heart. So when I stood behind that block before the whistle blew, I knew that I had to change my race strategy right there and then. Never done it before, and I thought, I've got to do something different. And I ended up swimming the first 100 the fastest I've ever gone out in. Like my PB is a 101.8, and I ended up going like a 62.1 or 62.0. So I was only like 0.1 or 0.2 off a 100-meter sprint at the start of a 400-meter race. So it was slightly suicidal. And then Amy caught me up on the backstroke, and I kind of felt, well, on the breaststroke leg, I have to be in front in order to guarantee that I can win this. And then I remember turning on the breaststroke, and all I saw was her feet, and I thought, pants. And then I thought, right, well, I've just got to try and hang on and try and see if I can get silver. And then as we were going down that sort of second last 50, I realized that it wasn't at her feet, I was at her knees, and then I was at her hips. And then we turned together, and I'll never forget turning and pushing off and hearing the crowd underwater. A lot of people don't realize how hard it is to hear noise when you're underwater. And oh my God, it just lifted me on that last 50, because I was dying on my backside. I was hurting so much. It's a 400 medley. You use every part of your body to get there. And then I could see my teammates waving me on at the side. And then when I finished, the first thing I did was I looked up at my block, and I saw the one red light, which indicates that you've come first. And it was just relief that I'd achieved something which I was pretty much doubting myself in doing for the majority of the year. And then when I saw my time, I was only 0.5 away from the time that I'd done in a poly suit. And everything just aligned right for me at that moment. And then I thought, you know what, this is my defining moment. Everyone does, either splashing or that sort of one key photograph moment. And I thought, I'm going to sit on the lane rope, and I'm going to punch my arms into the air. Sat on the lane rope, fell straight off in front of everybody, and they had the camera on it as well, and I was mortified. And I thought, I can't even do that kind of ace looking strong finish. I just looked like a numpty falling off the lane rope. But yeah, it was just more relief than excitement and happiness. And then when I stood on the podium again, there was a lot of raw emotion hearing the national anthem being played, because it was the team. It was the 2 years from London to there, and it was the best competition of my life. And even at the age of 25, I was performing at my best. I was doing personal best times. I was in the mix for not just the 400 medley, but a couple of other events as well. And yeah, and it just completely turned its head from being a pretty rubbish year into finishing into a really, really good year. And yeah, a lot of good things came from that, which I was really grateful for.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a home champs anyway is always exciting. But I was looking at the schedule you had for that. I forgot that you also, so not only did you win gold in the 400 IM, you obviously got bronze in the 200 IM, and you also made the final in the 200 breaststroke, 400 freestyle,
Yep.
where you finished fourth,
Yep.
800
Yep.
freestyle, and the relay, 4x2 relay, where you finished fifth, and then the 200 fly, where you finished sixth. That's a tough schedule.
Yeah, it was. And again, because I think I started off so well, I just rode off the high and it just carried me through the rest of the meet. And I just learned to relax a little bit more. I just learned to just breathe, just switch off. That main pressure was out the way. And I felt that, you know what, I've been able, if I can handle that, the rest of it should be easy. And I just learned to enjoy and embrace the games in itself. So, yes, that's probably one of my favorite meets of all time. Not just because of the outcome, but just getting to relax and enjoy it for what it was, not just I have to perform sort of thing.
Yeah, how much
Yeah.
of swimming is enjoyment for you?
Now it is quite a fair bit. I think it's a real tough balance and a tough fight. I think some athletes tend to go through because they have the expectation of times, they have the expectations of placings, making finals, making podiums. It's all numbers based. And it is hard sometimes to switch off from that, and it is hard to sometimes try and avoid looking at the numbers and actually just enjoy the race for what it is. The sort of raw reason that we race is to perform, and that's sport. So yeah, so I kind of the older I've gotten, the more I realize the importance of being able to enjoy what you do and kind of appreciate it a little bit more.
And then going through to 2015, looking at the World Champs results objectively, a fifth and a fourth place the year before an Olympics, that's not too bad. But
Yeah,
what did you think?
I struggled with that a little bit because for me, I felt that I missed an opportunity. One of my main rivals, who we've had a lot of head to head with, a Spanish girl, was withdrawn for medical reasons. So I kind of felt that I should be able to podium at this. The race should be a little bit easier compared to normal because this competitor who's always kind of there isn't. And yeah, and to come fourth, I just felt again the time just wasn't great, and I was kind of going back into that mode of just looking at the times, and previous times would have won me different colors of medals, and I just got really bogged down with it because I felt like I'd thrown an opportunity away and I couldn't figure out how because I felt I'd done everything right, and it just didn't work out, and I kind of overstressed about it because then obviously coming into Rio, it just gave me that little bit of, again, I lost a little bit of confidence in myself. So your confidence levels just kind of peak and trough.
I guess regardless, you're still going into your third Olympics, still top five in the world, which is an achievement in
Yeah.
itself. But I mean, 2016 is a year again, another going back into the London Stadium for the European champs again, coming away with two medals. That was a nice lead up to Rio, surely.
Yeah, it was, and especially it was straight off the back of trials, so knowing that you've qualified as well just took a weight off my shoulders. It definitely felt good being back in the pool and kind of, again, a bit like Budapest, kind of put in a race that you know you wanted to do better but wasn't good, and then putting in some good performances. So it's not the pool that's cursed because we get some serious weird superstitions. It can be, depending on the type of socks that you wear that day or what. But yeah, for me, it kind of felt nice knowing that, you know what, this is an incredible pool to swim in, and you can swim fast in this pool.
And then, well, your fifth defining moment is Rio, and it is your fourth place. Yeah. And I mean, I watched the race again actually a few days ago, and it's tough to watch. I mean, I don't know how it is for you, but even for us as fans to see you in bronze medal position with 20 meters to go, and Belmonte just comes past you and gets the bronze, and it's fractions of a second, and it's tough. But how was it for you then, and how is it for you now?
Then it was really hard. I felt I'd literally been sliced in half. From one side, it was the fastest performance I'd ever done at an Olympic Games. For me, I knew I couldn't have done it any better. I knew that if I'd gone out harder, I would have finished slower, which means that Belmonte probably would have been further ahead of me. So yes, the more I looked at it, the more I realized for me that was my perfect race. It just sucked that she was just that little bit quicker than me on that last 50. And again, there was times where I just thought, I just wish I was maybe like a couple of centimeters taller. And again, I'd always thought I put my size to rest, but I literally picked apart everything. So that was when it comes to the negative side. And the hardest thing, and I still to this day haven't watched back my interview, and I remember it. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I remember what I had to do to get through it. So when I finished and I didn't see any of the lights on the block, and I saw at the corner of my eye Belmonte's, I looked at the scoreboard, and the first thing I saw was my time, and joy, thinking that's the fastest time I've ever gone. It's faster than what I did at trials. This is brilliant. And then obviously when they reshuffled to tell you who's first, second, third, and fourth, and I saw I was fourth, and then I saw how close I was, 1500ths of a second. Get a stopwatch out and try and stop at 1500ths. It's no time at all. You then kind of hit with, it's like going through stages of grief almost, because you just suddenly think that's not fair. I've worked really hard for this. How did she do that? And then you start blaming yourself. You think, what did I not do right? What did I do wrong? And then you start blaming. And I started blaming Maria as well, thinking that's not fair. She shouldn't have done that. And then you realize when you come out, you've got to do an interview. And I was just stuck in this minute of, but it was a really good swim, but it wasn't a medal. But you couldn't have gone any faster. But I'm really gutted that I didn't get on the podium. So you're just battling these two emotions all at once, and you don't know what to do with it. And I remember turning around and looking into the crowd, and the very first person that I saw was my dad. And he put both of his arms up in the air. And then I remember I put one arm in the air to kind of signify that I'd seen him. And for me, I knew that everything was going to be okay. But I was really battling in my head with what to do, because I've always been known as Smiley Miley. And the last thing I want is people to think I'm miserable and grateful Miley for just bawling my eyes out in front of the camera. Because I really just wanted to cry. That's all I wanted to do, was just to cry with the emotion of feeling really gutted, the emotion of feeling disappointed, but also feeling really proud of myself that I battled my way through it. I'm 26, nearly 27, and I just come fourth in Olympic Games. And in swimming terms, that is kind of unheard of, especially in a distance event. But for me, it just didn't feel good enough. And then coming around to see Sharon, and the first thing she does is she just gives you the sympathy look. And you're like, no, don't feel sorry for me. And I didn't know whether I needed to apologize, because I know so many people would have been gutted. But at the same time, I knew I had to try and stay bubbly and light, because it's day one. We've got 7 other days of racing, and the team, if you're negative, you can't be, you don't want to be the one that is held responsible for bringing down the team morale. And I felt, being one of the senior athletes on the team, I had a responsibility to be respectful and to be happy. And yeah, I tried to box it in my head, and I got through the interview and I finished, and I just really struggled for a couple of days with it. And I remember when Maria won her gold medal, I made a point to go over and shake her hand, because I was like, I cannot blame her. It's not her fault. She swam the race of her life, and that's the whole point of sport. And I thought it would be really awful of me, because I've raced with her for so long. So I went and gave her a hug and congratulated her, and I felt so much better in myself, and I felt that was a little bit better in my healing. But it was just really hard, because I just couldn't accept that I hadn't won the medal. And it was, as I say, it's like you're going through stages of grief, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And then after that, we were on the plane flying home, and you just think, 1500ths of a second was the difference between turning left and being in business class and being showered with loads of praise and excitement, to then turning right and being placed in a seat that's near the toilet. And then when we landed, and they've got that amazing photograph of all the medalists coming out of the plane, everyone's cheering, you've got confetti, you've got so much support and celebration. We were still left on the plane. We were waiting for about an hour whilst they got this photograph done. And then when the medalists moved off, we were then brought out, and then there was nobody. And you just kind of felt you get kicked in the teeth. Something that small made such a big difference with how people, receive you as an individual. It's almost like they didn't matter who you were as an individual, the effort put in. It was whether you came back with a piece of metal or not. And that's when I had to really seriously think about what swimming meant to me. So I chose not to have a break. I trained right the way through, and I raced at the World Cups, because I thought, you know what? I need to get back to just racing for fun. And I came fourth 8 times, I think, during the World Cups. So my nose was well in with this fourth place malarkey. I just really struggled with the time. I couldn't talk about it without getting really upset. And it was just a really rough time in my head. And I'd realized that I just needed to give myself a break. And I remember when I won my silver medal at the Commonwealth Games, I was just delighted I had a medal. And that's when I realized that's not what I should be thinking of my sport. It shouldn't be about defining your who you are as an individual based on the achievements that you won. I am Hannah because I'm renowned for being a hardworking athlete. I'm Hannah because I am competitive. I am Hannah because I just love being in that water. Having medals, having records, it's good. It's a cherry on the top, but that doesn't define me who I am as an individual, because time goes past. Medals, yeah, still remain and all that, and memories kind of stay, but it's who you are as an individual and how you are as a person. And I realized I can't sit and be miserable and be upset with myself all my life, because that's not a way to be. And that's when I started trying to change things up. So after the European Championships, I then had surgery on my ankle, and that was kind of a big point for me. I then was able to reflect back onto Rio and realize, why do I swim? Do I swim for the medals? Probably 15 years ago, I would have said, yeah, medals, PBs, winning, being on teams, yeah, all that stuff. That's why you swim. But now I swim because I genuinely just love to race. I love the excitement race gives you. I love setting myself a challenge, finding that process that's not time related, that's maybe mentally targeted or physically targeted, whether it's a set number of kicks off a wall, whether it's not breathing in the last 15 meters, little things like that, and then being able to achieve those goals. So I kind of really had to peel back my psychology and go back to basics. So I'm still learning an awful lot from Rio, and it is a huge defining point for me, because I could have easily just stopped and just quit and just never faced it, and I would have found a different way, I guess, of overcoming it and coming back round. But if I hadn't stopped, I wouldn't have competed at the Commonwealth Games again. I wouldn't have competed at the European Championships. And the last couple of years, I wouldn't have experienced it. So it's definitely been a huge learning curve, and I can't quite pinpoint the one thing it means. There's just so many meanings to it. So yeah, sorry, that's a very long-winded answer to that.
No, it's good. I mean, Rio was tough as a whole. I mean, the British team got about a million fourth places as well, so it wasn't just you.
Yeah.
There must have been a fair amount of sympathy going around the British camp then. 2017 was the world champs, and then like you mentioned, 2018 was to be satisfied with a Commonwealth medal, and then Europeans again in Glasgow and another medal. So then was that the point when you were thinking, like, what am I going to do next, or was that when you decided just to kind of have a mental break as well as fix your ankle? Was it that a joint thing of having a bit of a break for both body and mind?
Basically, because I was ready to quit at that point. I really had enough. I felt I'd broken myself mentally and physically, and I knew I hadn't, but just I perceived myself that way. So having the surgery done on my ankle forced me to have that break. And the funny thing was, is I was told that I couldn't do any exercise on it. I had to stay out in the water for, I think, a couple of weeks. And I was like, yep, I'm just going to enjoy kicking back, resting on the sofa. I lasted 24 hours and I was bored. I just plonked myself in the water and goggles and cap on and just sculled, just felt the water. And getting that moment back, actually, I realized how much I missed it, and how much I actually realized I could do something completely different. I don't have to go back to the way that I was training before. I could actually focus in on my head more. And that's when I realized I'm going to go into a competition where I've got no pressure, and I'm going to look at trying to pick two goals that I'm going to get out of the swim that aren't time related. So my first race was in January 2019, and I was really terrified. I was like, I don't want to race in Britain because I don't want to get embarrassed by how slow I'm going to swim. So we went over to Spain and I raced, and I thought, right, I've got two goals in my head. Don't breathe in the last 10 meters. Try and get 3 fly kicks off each wall, which at the time was really difficult for me to do. So I raced it and I touched the wall. And normally when you touch the wall or finish a race, the first thing you do is immediately whip your head around to look at the scoreboard. And I thought, right, take a breath. Did I achieve the first goal? Yeah, all bar the last 50. I think I managed to do the 3 fly kicks off each turn. Obviously not on breaststroke. And then the second goal, did I breathe in the last 10 meters? No, I didn't. So I thought, that's pretty good. And then I turned and looked at the time, and yeah, it was miles off my best time. But that didn't matter. I felt like I still achieved something from that, and I really enjoyed that feeling. So I started delaying looking at the scoreboard and allowing myself to reflect and adjust to what I'd just done before I then got the sort of black and white answer from a time, and raced at the British Championships. And there's a video actually of me finishing, and my head's down and I'm tapping the wall with my fingers, and you can see me talking to myself before I look at the scoreboard. So they actually have it on video of me doing that, and a lot of people I think are going, what is she doing? But I just felt so confident and happy in what I was doing. I actually enjoyed the British Championships because I knew, we said, I'm not aiming to go to Worlds. So it was the first time I could go to race and not feel the pressure of having to make a team. And I loved it. I really, really loved it. And I enjoyed it. Brought back just the pureness of just racing. And I came away with a bronze medal. And that actually, I was just so delighted. Been more delighted than probably any of the other medals that I'd won to win that. I had to learn to let go of, you don't have to always be winning the medals in order to be good enough.
And then looking ahead to Tokyo, providing it goes ahead next year. I mean, what are your realistic expectations for that? What do you want? What is your best case scenario to come out of that?
Obviously to see what the qualifying standard is for the event. When I saw what the qualifying standard was, if it was to go ahead this year, I definitely knew that it was within me to do it. It's just a matter of doing it. It wasn't a huge leap to do. So it'll be interesting to see what they do for the criteria for it. And then it'll be a matter of trying to compete and then see if I can make that standard. And then if I can make that standard and get in the team, I can then look to the next bit. So it's trying to kind of set myself little goals rather than just set this one big one and then expect myself to jump straight up to it. I kind of need to set myself the little stepping stones to make sure that A, I'm still going in that right direction, and B, mentally, I can kind of look after myself a little bit more.
Competing at 4 Olympic Games as a swimmer is pretty rare anyway, so that'll be an achievement in itself. And then I'm just wondering if obviously if you did make it, would that be it, or would you think a fifth Commonwealth Games, is that possible?
I'm kind of not one for giving away what I'm doing purely because things change. I kind of don't like stating I am definitely going to be doing this or I'm definitely going to be doing that, because I don't want people to have assumptions and make decisions for me, because I don't want to say this is my last year, because when it comes to that swim, they'll be like, oh, so happy retirement. And you're like, whoa, hold on. I've not quite processed that. So I don't know. I'm kind of like, my mind, as I say, I was due to finish last year. So I'm kind of keeping my cards close to my chest on that. And I'm just going to take each month as it comes.
Yeah, I think that's very sensible, a very sensible thing to do. Okay, just looking back on your whole career, obviously we discussed a lot. I mean, I just want to know what swimming actually means to you. How important is it in your life?
It's really important for me. For me, I do get lost in my own head sometimes when I'm in the water, but the good days when you can just go in and just get lost in your own imagination, where you can propel yourself with very little effort, going back to watching Misty and seeing how effortless they can make it look, and then having that feeling of effortlessness, it just feels incredible. For me, it's kind of my safe space. It's the place I can go where I I can kind of feel at home just diving in the water. Being on poolside is great. Whoever I'm with teammate wise is awesome, and with my dad, my coach, but nothing compares to that moment of when you dive in the water. And that's kind of what lockdown taught me as well. Even diving in for the lock, for me, I instantly felt at home. Swimming's given me, I guess, a sense of purpose. It's taught me that I am competitive and can be very driven, but it's also taught me that I do get very stressed out sometimes by little things. And it's given me so many opportunities where I get to travel the world. I've been able to meet new people from different countries and keep in touch with them as well, and taught me a lot about resilience and the different forms it comes in. A lot of people assume athletes, oh, you're an athlete, therefore you must always be resilient. And I've kind of learned that there's so many different variations of that word and different scenarios for it. For me, it's in my heart. I just love being in the water, and I love the feeling that it's given me, and I love the opportunities that it's given me.
Okay, so now we're just coming up to the end now, and I just want you to pick one of your 5 defining moments as your one defining moment if you can. So just to recap, your first one was your goggles snapping as a child. Number 2 was failing advanced higher biology. Number 3 was winning gold at the 2010 Europeans. Number 4 was gold at the 2014 Glasgow Commonwealth Games, and number 5 was 4th place at the Rio Olympics. So, if you had to pick one, which would be the most defining moment?
I can't quite pick between number 4 and number 5. They're kind of like my top 2, and I know you said top 1. I guess Rio was more impactful. So I'll go with Rio. I'll say that's probably my most defining moment, because a lot has changed, I guess, since then, and I've had to reevaluate a lot of things. So I guess that's kind of taught me the biggest lesson.
And then I ask everybody just a little bit about generic questions, I suppose. Like, so how do you feel like the lows of your career have helped the highs, and vice versa? How have the highs helped the lows?
The lows have helped the highs, and that I think it makes you appreciate them a lot more. Makes you realize that you can't take things for granted. And then the highs, I think it celebrates the struggle. So to get to the high, no one gets to the highs without there being some form of a struggle or for there being some kind of hardship with it. So I think it makes you appreciate the highs a little bit more as well.
If there's one race or moment in your career that you'd like to do again, what would it be and why?
Probably 2014. 2014, because I'd love to be able to capture that moment, that sudden confidence of changing my decision and how I was going to race it. And then just the actual race itself. Purely because I've never been in so much pain in my life, I think, in the last 50 meters, because I guess I went out so hard at the start. But just how the whole race unfolded was so different to compared to what I'd done before. And I would race it purely to race it again. I wouldn't change anything about it. I would just want to savor the feeling of that race and just kind of remind myself of how that whole race felt.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. And then if there's anything you'd tell your younger self, what would you say to young Hannah Miley?
Be kind to yourself. Look after your head a little bit more. And don't sweat the small stuff. There are bigger things out there that need more attention than the small little things.
Yeah, wise words. I'm just going to finish on a quote that I read that apparently you'd said. I'm not the biggest, I'm not the strongest, but I will be the hardest working athlete I can be. Is that a fair assessment of your career?
Pretty much. And I think I remember taking a picture of that, of me trying to show that I had some form of back muscles doing a pull-up. That is kind of one of my favorite quotes I like to live by, because you don't have to be, I mean, obviously being strong helps, but you have to be prepared to put in the effort and the hard work. It doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter what your power output is. It's the heart in your head that counts. If you're prepared to work hard, then you can achieve anything. You don't have to have the medal around the neck to be an achieving athlete.
Oh, well, I guess just thank you for being on the podcast. I hope you've enjoyed looking back over a very long and illustrious career.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much for having me.
And yeah, all the best with your future endeavours, and hopefully we'll see you in Tokyo next year.
Thank you. Fingers crossed.
Well, thank you so much, Hannah, for being such a great guest on My Defining Moments. I really did enjoy listening to the highs and lows of your swimming career. Thanks again for listening to the My Defining Moments podcast. If you've liked what you've listened to, why not subscribe to the My Defining Moments podcast? You can find me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Join me again soon when another elite sports person will be telling me the 5 defining moments of their career. I've been ChrisBrownSport, and thanks for listening.